So, recently, Blade Sorcery, the medieval fantasy VR fighting game, has received a major update, the U8 update, as it were. And this update added a variety of new things, including a very nice new map and more magic, as well as an armor system for your enemies. These have all, in one way or another, fundamentally changed the dynamic of the game, with only the minor downside of absolutely slaughtering performance basically everywhere you go. So I must caveat that for this video we are going to be discussing 1v1 battles in the classic mode for two reasons. For one, 1v1s are the only mode that run reliably at this point in time, and also 1v1s are a great way to abuse the ways that this game works and pull some really stupid stuff on the enemy AI. If you want to figure out how to commit various human rights abuses in Blade Sorcery VR, continue watching. So in this intellectual guide to Blade Sorcery, I will be describing how to use the minor and smaller weapons up into the larger ones, finishing off with some of the magic things that you can pull off. And we shall, in that case, start with the Dagger. That always works. The Dagger in of itself is not a very impressive weapon, but if you want to roleplay a street gang in London, the Dagger is the first way to go. As with the knife, you will generally be able to, especially on the early stages of enemies where they are not given much armor, basically shank most of the people who come into your way. It does help to have a large amount of space to play around in, because the knife is, despite being the smallest weapon, probably the most in real life dangerous to use, as I have almost taken out windows and probably my own knuckle bones using the knife and trying to stab, only to go way too far forward, so keep that in mind. Now, the knife is not only a stabbing weapon, as you will be forced to find out when armored enemies begin to appear, it is also a slashing weapon, and this can be used in multiple ways to help defeat your enemies, as you can either cut their arms, which the forearm area is very rarely properly armored, and give them more cuts than an emo teenager, or you can decide to go for the eyes/face. This is definitely a more effective strategy, and this will end with giving your enemies either cool scars or traumatic head injuries. Your choice. You have to be quite fast using the knife to at least be able to get your enemy off their guard. So I would recommend trying to get at least a minor hit in on the hand or the leg, because those are the most commonly unarmored areas and in most cases the easiest to hit, before trying to actually land a death blow to the face or just continuing to harass them in some unkind way. Now the next weapon I will describe will be the Mace. The Mace in itself is a very simple weapon. It is the slightly evolved form of the caveman's club. I'm gonna beat you to death. All I wanted to do was drink my health potion, but you had to come here and do that. And not quite to the earth-shattering, skull-breaking degree of the Maul, but the Mace is quite effective, especially since you can have a shield. As far as the Mace goes, it is probably the simplest weapon to use in the entire game, as it does not require the dynamic movement of a two-handed weapon, and all you really have to do is bonk them on the head. It's like playing whack-a-mole except with human lives. Fine, I'll beat you to death too. The next weapon will be the one-handed sword. There are several varieties, from a gladius to a kind of Nordic design, and they all function relatively similarly. capable of cutting and stabbing both at a somewhat mediocre level, but I personally enjoy it, especially when given a shield. The one-handed sword and shield kind of gives you the definitive medieval experience of what you probably grew up thinking a knight looked like. Let's see how... Oh wow, you bled a lot from a little punch. Oh, rip you. Ooh. Now, I should note that while it is pretty easy to use the sword offensively against unarmored opponents, as it will be able to either cut limbs off or stab them, when it comes to more armored opponents, you either have to pull the knife move and just go for the arms. It's purely going to be a matter of, I guess, disarming him, literally. You can get pretty solid stabs on the leg or even complete removals of legs. Whoa! That was some not. Oh god! Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh wow! I am really surprised that took your leg off. Or you can pull the alternate strategy, which I find to just be really fun, which is to actually use your shield itself as a weapon. This combined with kicks can keep the enemy off their feet long enough for you to land a solid hit with the sword that'll finish them off, or to just give them enough blunt force trauma to be in a situation where their bones would be like jigsaw pieces that need to be put back together. This is the most intense sword fight I've had with somebody in this game right here. Next one-handed weapon is my favorite of the one-handed weapons, and it's the axe. Oh god. How are you still moving? The axe is actually a rather versatile weapon, once again paired with the shield, or in this case I would say the axe is relatively viable, or at least fun, done dual-handed. Just hitting someone's knee is too much. It is very fun to do this, as especially if you can keep one of their arms busy, particularly the one armed, you can keep in mind that by having a weapon in each hand, you have the advantage of a different perspective and angle to hit things at. So you can either swing for the arm that is holding the weapon and disarm them, which is actually a very effective tactic. Disarming your enemy is basically an instant victory, no matter how well armored they are. Oh, this guy has armor. But not on his arms. Or legs. And having the second hand that can fully attack is quite useful for getting an unexpected hit on the enemy that they won't be expecting to dodge. You can keep them occupied with one hand, swinging at them and just keeping them distracted, and then cut their nutsack off with the other. I've kind of figured out how to block hits now. The axe is also very good at removing limbs in a surgical manner. There we go. You are a skunk. Oh, and this is quite good for satisfying kills done with one-handed weapons. As the other one-handed weapons are very difficult, generally speaking, to be able to take much of any limbs off. Now comes to the two-handed weapons, and we'll start with my least favorite, but not by any means a bad weapon, the spear, and technically the double-edged polearm. I'm just going to call it because I don't remember what it is, but it's that stick with the spear ends on both sides. I'm going to go ahead and tell you it's not very good, because if you want to hit with the other side, the only two ways that you can do that is either getting really close and doing that, or basically knocking them down and then just pulling a Darth Maul and stabbing them. As far as the spear itself goes, it can actually be used as a swung weapon, as it has two little pikes out the side. But of course, it is a spear, it is the pokey stick. You would be surprised, I would imagine, if I was to tell you to do anything other than poke the enemy. This works exceptionally well on low-end enemies, as most of them will not have shields nor armor. Screw up. Oh, you got real unlucky with that one. That was unfortunate, Chief. This thing feels real awkward in the hand. But it's real easy to attack quickly. However, against heavily armored melee combatants, the spear really starts to fail a little bit. I'm not gonna stop stabbing you unless you leave. Death by 1,000 paper cuts and a stab to the groinular region. So maybe the leg. Dude, I just stuck that right through your thigh. You're not vibing right now. Oh, right in the forehead. In most cases, I would recommend either trying to sweep them off their feet by swinging just the bar at their legs. Or trying to stab them in the legs. Generally, aim below the belt. Nobody cares about honor in this universe. Dang, that was a surprisingly accurate throw. Next comes the Great Sword, Longsword, or Claymore. Despite having vastly different weights, they all function relatively similarly, just with a different amount of force behind the hits. God. The amount of power is so unnecessary. I would say out of the two-handed weapons, the Claymore in particular is a rather interesting weapon, as it is not that good against armor, and it's not that good at stabbing. Dude, I've got this big sword right through your liver. I don't know how you're alive. So it is kind of like a swinging weapon without the concentrated force of an axe. I really cannot say that I know how you're alive right now. It is generally quite effective, once again, in early stages. Is that it? Yeah? Okay. Okay, this is where things get interesting. But due to a lack of blunt force and the fact that half swording is kind of awkward, going up against armored opponents is kind of difficult. However, you always have the great option that I've found to be the most effective: just try to chop their legs off. Grundle stab time. That's really not a pleasant way to die. Next we have the two-handed axe, and the Dane Axe in particular has a very large concentrated amount of force. Well, I mean, what are you really gonna do now? I mean, yeah. I don't know why you tried. Meaning that even against heavily armored opponents, the weapon will be quite effective, as it just has a decent amount of force behind it that can be used to at least knock them down and then go for a killing move. Ah, here we go, a good candidate. Well, that always works. Ah! Oh my god! Oh my god! You'd throw that right into my neck. Oh, okay. It does not need to be said that due to the immense power of a weapon like the Dane Axe, a melee fight against an unarmored opponent will end with a lot of lacerations and, generally speaking, removed appendages for the enemy. Oh. Okay. See, I'm very humanitarian. I just disarm people. Like I can just scare them away by swinging at them. Oh, you are so screwed. Oh, you missed. Oh no, oh no. Poor lad. Oh. Yeah, got him. Next I'm going to mention the Maul, which is kind of like the Mace, it's just bigger and even more literally skull-crushing. I'm gonna knock your knees into your spleen. Oh god. It's so violent. Ouch. The Maul requires a very small amount of skill to use, considering that on no matter which enemy you face, if you want a guaranteed kill with the Maul, smash their head harder than the German lines in 1944. Ooh, your knees are looking mighty tasty. God, this thing is okay. You are challenging me. What are you doing? The final two-handed weapon that I'm going to mention in particular is the bardiche. Why did you even come in? Like, you could have just been here tomorrow. This is not going to end very well for you. You may think that it is something more like the Dane Axe, and it is definitely able to be used in a similar way. However, I would say that it is better, because while I would think that it has slightly less concentrated force in one area, I would put it above the Dane Axe as it has a larger striking area. Oh no. And you can actually stab with it to help keep enemies away. The stabbing is slightly awkward, but due to the large hitting area of the bardiche, and in my opinion, it may be due to my height, that it feels pretty good in the hand as far as balance goes. It's not too long and it's not too short, and it is generally very comfortable to use. Oh my god. My favorite move to do with it is, once again, to sweep for the leg, except unlike the Maul, you may actually cut off their leg and just win the fight right there, and if you don't, you just move it around and pull off what the Executioner in the first 5 minutes of Skyrim couldn't. Beautiful. And watch their thinking appendage goes spiraling off into the stars. Now the last main category of things to mention for Blade of Sorcery is of course the magic. There are three main types: the gravity, lightning, and fire magic. Fire magic is probably the simplest in practical application, as you can either charge up a fireball to throw at your enemies, or you can heat up your weapon to make it armor piercing. It's just how you're meant to use this. God, I have just turned this man into Anakin Skywalker. Next we have the lightning power, which allows you to relive Palpatine's most wet dream. Lightning is a very fun thing to use, I have found, and a little bit more enjoyable than the fire. For one thing, shocking them personally with your hands tends to be a rather effective way to do things, as it'll keep them stunned even if it doesn't kill them long enough for you to land a solid hit. Or you can imbue your own weapon with the lightning, hit them, and then watch them basically get tased. It is really quite entertaining. Oh man. However, I do believe that I have saved one of the best for last, and that is the gravity power.
You have failed me for the last time.
The gravity power can actually be used in a multitude of ways, as I've found out, which is that either one, you can imbue your weapon with the gravity powers, and it'll make them kind of floaty when you hit them with it. This is best combined with the second ability, which is to imbue a weapon. I know that it works on the staff, but it may work on other weapons, with said gravity power, and then after hitting your enemy with the gravity power to where they are imbued with it, you then strike the ground with your weapon, and it'll create a shockwave. This will effectively allow your enemy to become the very first astronaut in this medieval era. Oh wow, if you hit him with it... Oh no. That's great. Okay, I'm gonna have to do that now. Okay. So smack him with it. Oh my god. So then you whack him in the legs, then you hit him in the head, then you throw him into space. Oh my god, what did I do to him? He just disintegrated or something. And the final ability of gravity, and the most abusable thing in the entire game, is the fact that when you have the power selected in your hand, you can simply shove your grabbing orifice over at them, and when you see those white circles show up, press your grip button, give it a second for it to latch on, and all of a sudden... This is really way too much power. Far more power than I should be allowed access to. Oh my god. This is so dumb. I love this. God. What a nice place this is, you know? It's very nice. It'd be a shame if you had to depart. Oh my god. This is insane. Oh my god. Whoa. Whoa. Oh my god, my hand. Oh no. How do I fix my hand? Oh god, I thought it was about to throw me off. And my arm. I was worried I was going to lose control there. No! So I personally find that gravity ability to be the best way to insult human dignity as far as Blade and Sorcery goes. So, I hope that I have educated you on how to be the greatest and most honorable medieval warrior in the great game of Blade and Sorcery. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, consider liking and subscribing, and I shall see you in the next one, hopefully. Do svidaniya.